You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. We certainly appreciate you guys being here. Thanks for tuning in. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the big podcast circus tent in the sky. We bring you the most brilliant minds, the brilliant thought leaders, the thinkers, the doers, all those sort of folks. And then, of course, I'm just the host over here doing whatever it is that I do every day. For 14 years and going on now 1,500 episodes, we've been here and we appreciate you. But as always, that's our lead in to ask you to beg for the plugs. Please refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, YouTube.com/Chris Voss, and all those crazy places that we are on the internet. Today, once again, we have a brilliant mind on the show. Hunter Clarke-Fields, an MSAE, joins us on the show. She is the author of the newest book that just comes out August 1st, 2023, Raising Good Humans Every Day. 50 simple ways to press pause, stay present, and connect with your kids. She joins us on the show, and she'll be talking to us about how to become a more mindful parent. And speaking of mindfulness, Hunter is a Mindful Mama mentor. She is the creator of Mindful Parenting course and host of the Mindful Mama podcast, and widely followed author of Raising Good Humans, a mindful guide to breaking the cycle of reactive parenting and raising kids and kind, confident kids as well. The kind is important, I think. She's an MSAE and an RYT, and she helps people and parents, sometimes people too. People, parents, is that same thing? I don't know. We're just having fun here. Bring more calm and peace into their daily lives. She's got 20 years of experience in meditation practices and has taught mindfulness to thousands worldwide. She's writings appeared on CNBC, NBC, The Huffington Post, Tiny Buddha, Mops, Elephant Journal, Mothering, and a number of other online magazines and websites. And she's the mother of 2 active daughters who challenge her every day to hone her craft. I love it. Welcome to the show, Hunter. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me, Chris.
There you go. It sounds like you're living the experience in the life, too, of what you're writing about.
Indeed. Yes.
Indeed.
Every day.
It's a never-ending fun carnival. So give us your .com of where people can find you on the interwebs, please.
Sure. mindfulmamamentor.com.
There you go. So you've written a couple books now. How many books have you written?
This is number 2.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Number 1 did very well. It really surprised me. And then I was like, okay, I'm sure I can write another book. And it was fun and exciting because I got to do it in this like fun format with these tiny little chapters that just make you feel like you've accomplished something when you read like 3 to 4 pages and you're like, I get the ideas in 3 to 4 pages. And if you're busy, that's like such a relief. You feel like you can accomplish something. So that's my aim.
And it did really well on Amazon. Got lots of great reviews, and probably moms are busy. They're doing all the nurturing mom stuff, and it's good they have time. But it's good to know that moms still care and they want to be the best moms they can be. Because whenever moms decide they're just not going to give a crap anymore, well, then we're in for a world of hurt. So
yeah, we're in trouble then.
There you go. So what motivated you to add on to it and write this book?
Well, I wrote Raising Good Humans initially because of my temper. That was my motivation. I was doing terribly. I wasn't like naturally an expert at any of this. I had like a bad temper and I was really struggling. And so I had to kind of turn back to these mindfulness practices to steady and become less reactive and to just dial it down a bit and then like figure out how to talk to my kids. Because all I learned from my parents was, barking orders and commands and threats, right? Like that's kind of like my natural, that's my like home, my native parenting language. So I had to learn a new language, right? That was more effective and for a new generation. And so, yeah, so it was really about these essential skills. And then with this book, with Raising Good Humans Every Day, it was about, I've been doing the Mindful Mama podcast for 10 years.
Wow.
And I've had so many guests. We talked about so many different things. And so I really got to, with this book, with the 50 short chapters, I get to like expand on, mindfulness and skillful communication and just like go into lots of other areas like our schedules, our lives, and all these different things that really affect our parenting and our experience raising kids.
There you go. Have you ever thought about in the future doing a book called Raising Horrible Human Beings?
I think that should be up next, like raising terrible, mean people. It would be a really great idea.
I think someone's written that book because there seems to be a lot of them operating. Fun there. But no, this is really important, and I love how you talk about being present too. Give us a 30,000 overview of the book, and then we'll get into some of the details.
Sure. So I think we're at our worst when we're parenting, right? Like if we go to like where we're suffering the most is like when we're reactive, when we're just like we're saying like if you hit your brother again, I'm gonna hit you, right? Like saying things like that, right? Like and it just that's kind of when we're at our worst. So we have to, as parents, we want to think about like what can we do to do better in those circumstances. And I think of it like I actually have an acronym for it. I have the CLEAR method. And the whole idea is to calm our reactivity because we may hear like good ways to respond from well-meaning parenting coaches and say like, respond to your kids this way, it's better. And then when you're reactive, when your nervous system's like on overdrive, you're stressed, you can't even access that. Like literally the stress response is bypassing that slower part of your brain where all that knowledge is kept. So we have to, calming our stress response, becoming less reactive has to be the foundation for anything else we want to do. If we want to actually make a choice in how we want to respond, rather than just respond out of autopilot, we have to work with calming our nervous system. It has to be the foundation.
There you go. And probably all of what you described doesn't work well if you're not getting any sleep. Most of my friends that I know have kids, I don't have any. I think legally it's against the law or something for me to have children. They've seen me and I've seen them. But basically, if you don't have sleep, my friends will tell me, they'll be like, I haven't slept in 14 years, Chris. And I'm like, what? I mean, that's the whole reason I didn't have kids, is I really enjoy sleep. But it's hard if you don't have sleep to, deal with all the stuff that you talked about as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's definitely a foundation. And part of that, like not getting enough sleep, especially for moms, is this whole mindset that we have in our culture of like the self-sacrificing mom being so wonderful.
Yeah.
But it really leads to, it's actually like a really toxic idea because it leads to this idea that, I don't need any sleep, but none of us functions well on no sleep. None of us functions well if our needs aren't being met, if we don't have like time with supportive family and friends, if we don't get we're always putting ourselves last, or we don't get exercise, or we don't get sleep. And part of what feeds into that is that mindset of like, I'm always going to put my children first. But actually, like taking care of ourselves, our own self-care, and valuing our own needs as much as our kids' needs, right? Like when you have an infant, their needs are much more urgent, right? But that changes when we value our needs, and we start to say, okay, I am not getting enough sleep, but my sleep is really important. It's the foundation for me being able to respond as like a kind, conscious human being to my kids. So what can we do about it, right? Like this is actually, rather than being a martyr and saying, this is what the great self-sacrificing mom does. Like, don't do that BS. Instead, say, I deserve that, and go find ways to get your needs met.
There you go. I love it. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't share with other people. I've seen this with mothers. Mothers will eat last. Sometimes, she'll feed the children first. Sometimes she won't eat at all. She'll just eat whatever is left over. I see lots of examples of mothers that take care of their family first, and God bless them. But you're right. It's hard to share and give to people if you're empty. You can't fill you can't fill a gas tank with an empty container of gas.
No. It leads to burnout and resentment,
Mhm. Yep.
ultimately, and
Burnout,
that's
resentment.
so, and plus you're modeling for your kids. The best parenting is in modeling. What are you, if you want your kids to speak respectfully to you, you've got to speak respectfully to them. If you want them to, they're watching every moment, right? For 18 years. So like, if you want them to turn into people who don't value their own needs and sacrifice themselves for everybody else first, like, then maybe you should go ahead. But if that's not what you want for your kids, maybe you should start to value your own needs too.
There you go. Let's hear a little bit of your origin story. How did you get down this road, and what guided you kind of into this practice? I understand that you have the title of MSAE. To expand on that and what that is, and kind of how you got down this road of focusing on this.
It was kind of a surprise, sort of twist in my journey for me.
Mhm.
My MSAE stands for Master of Science in Art Education.
Ah.
And so I was briefly a high school art teacher, and it felt like it was killing my soul. It was the first time I ever had panic attacks in my life, was in that parking lot. And then I did a yoga teacher training so that I could like get free yoga. And then as I got into that helped me like kind of follow my mindfulness practice a little bit more. The mindfulness practice was something I'd started learning about when I was a teenager, just desperate for some relief for the like intense sort of ups and downs of being a highly sensitive person. And so then as I moved away from teaching, and then I had my first child, that was when I started to sort of pursue, follow this other line of blogging and writing. And then from that eventually came a lot of learning, a lot of different trainings and learning to then bring myself to this place where I can offer these practical tools, but also with the standpoint of like, no, this wasn't something I was naturally good at. It was something I was naturally kind of like, I kind of sucked at it. I was good at a lot of other things, but I was really felt like I was failing at this. And so I was like, wanted to know, what actually works. Like, how do you do these things? So everything I write is very, very practical. I really want to help parents in a very easy, practical way.
There you go. And you talk about staying present, and I really love this concept of staying present. I was going through a very hard time, and I couldn't control my mind, and things were out of control. And my dogs, which are my children, would come up to me, and I just felt like they were passing me by in life, and I couldn't connect to them. I just sit there and look at them. I was like, why can't I feel like I'm connecting? And then I read Eckhart Tolle's book under recommendation from a friend. And it sounds like you use some different techniques like meditation and yoga. Tell us a little bit about that and why it's important to be present. And, a lot of people, they go through raising kids and it's over before they know it. I hear a lot of my parent friends complain about that. Like, geez, where'd the time go?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many reasons to be present. I mean, for parents, I think, for me initially as a high schooler, I was like struggling with intense ups and downs. Kind of my whole life, I'd felt things very deeply, and the mindfulness practices, they really helped me to recover more quickly, to interrupt negative thought cycles, and to bring myself back to the present moment. And what that does beautifully is like when we're always kind of, our brains are in these, black boxes in our skull, right? They're just trying to keep us alive and keep us safe. So they're always predicting the future. And so our brains sometimes, are delving into the past, but a lot of time it's into the future, it's planning, it's worrying. That's what the natural human tendency towards anxiety comes from, is like kind of keeping us alive. And when we can, a mindfulness practice, what's beautiful about it is it helps us to interrupt that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like it goes away. Like, it's not like you stop thinking. That you'd have to have like a lobotomy or something. Like, we don't want that, right?
I've got one scheduled next week.
The brain thinks just as the ears hear and the eyes see. Mm-hmm. So we practice to come back to the present, and it just provides this relief from the constant foreshadowing and going in the future. And then for parents, it's a shame because so many of us, we want to be good parents. So we go into it in this like kind of achievement mode, maybe that we've had for a lot of our lives. So we've been trained in from school and things like that, where we want to get the good grade and we want to do the extra credit, right? So we plan the big blowout vacation. We have all the different classes and things, everything's lined up. But then what happens is our brain is then in constant autopilot mode, where we're planning, we're on logistics for dinner and next week and tomorrow and getting to the class and getting to this and doing all these different things. And the thing is that when we plan in such a way like that, when we finally get to that Cancun vacation, right, where we think, oh, I'm going to be really present and with my kids, your brain can't do it because you have practiced being in the future and being on autopilot all the time. And the only place we can love our children is in the present moment.
Exactly.
That's it. That's
Exactly.
the only thing. And so the thing they want most from us is to be seen, to be heard. They want that expression of delight in seeing them and accepting them just for who they are, just for existing. And that is this incredible gift we can give another human, our children. And we can't do it if we're always moving forward in the future forward, when we're always in autopilot mode. So it is imperative, if we want to actually experience this experience of life, of being with these humans, right, that maybe, likely came out of our bodies, right? Like, we have to practice a little bit every day to interrupt that autopilot and come back to being present. I see you, I hear you, I am here in this moment with you.
There you go. It's so important, especially because life goes so fast by you, and sometimes we don't have a full run with the people that are in and out of our lives, or maybe we're the person who's not going to be the full run. Maybe a parent passes away beforehand. The imprint that parents leave on children is like so important. You mentioned earlier about you're setting example for them. In my book, I wrote about how even parents are leaders. We don't. People think of leaders as CEO, a guy who runs Apple computers, and I talk about how parents are leaders too. You're leading, but you're also setting an example and showing how to be, number one, like you talk about, a good human being, or some people might be showing something different. I've seen it on Cops, but and also the relationship you have between a masculine and feminine in the household. You show how that dynamic works and raises, and all that gets representation and imprint into their brain. And if they don't have good imprints of what a good person is, someone who operates with good morals, honesty, integrity, et cetera, they're going to grow up and have some problems, I think. I don't know, I could be wrong.
No, absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing, is like, that modeling piece is so huge. And it's funny because we kind of have, and this kind of goes into sort of that communication piece, right? Like, there's that piece about being less reactive, and then how do we communicate? A lot of us just kind of, we replay the same things that our parents did with us, and just, that's our model, right? We're not taking any classes. A lot of us, we're not learning. And that we think that, we have these ideas of like, well, if I'm going to bark orders at my kid, and I'm going to threaten my kid, and then I'm going to expect them to be very respectful to me. Except we're not modeling it. We're not modeling it. We're modeling the one with the most power wins. And then if we're lucky, maybe we have a second child, and we start to see the first child say, well, this is what happened to me anyway. Saw the first child barking orders and yelling at the younger child, and I was like, oh, wow, that's what I sound like. Uh-oh, and
Wow.
that's a great gift, because then we can say, oh, okay. I think parents, we're going to repeat ourselves with our kids a bazillion times, because that's just the nature of human beings. And that's how we learn, is we learn through repetition. All human beings do, adults do. If you think you want your kid to do something the first time you say it, imagine an adult just like getting something the number one time you say it, and then kind of shift those expectations. But we're going to repeat ourselves a lot. So we might as well be practicing to repeat the kind of language we want spoken back to us, the kind of, interest and tone and respect that we want given back to us, we have to give what we want to receive. We have to model that for our kids. It's not like we speak to some people in the world in one language and then we speak to kids in a totally different language. Like that actually doesn't work. So it's not very effective.
Yeah. One thing I noticed when I was growing up in high school is that most of my bullies, when I got to get some knowledge of what their home life was like, their home life was really ugly, and usually their parent was a bully. And I think we've kind of grown through these different ages of where it used to be really about survivalship, and people just surviving. So it's like suck it up and maybe take a belt to a kid or whatever, and maybe punishment was a little harsh, and then of course the examples that were set for us probably weren't always so great. So I think it's important that there are resources like yours now where parents can get some more education. As you mentioned before, a lot of people don't spend a lot of pre-education time being parents. I wish I've often joked as a single guy that I'm like, they really should make people go to college for 2 years before they allow them to be parents, but I don't make the rules, clearly. But there's always those people that say my kids will never be like that, and like some of what you said alluded to that. I remember one time I had a girlfriend say, my girlfriends will never be the people screaming in the grocery store, and I remember looking at her thinking, damn, your kids are gonna be the ones.
Well, it's funny too, because the thing is, like, before we have kids, and I did this too, like I would look at like the mom like losing it at this kid and I'd be like, oh my God, I will never do that, right? And I made like conscious choices, like that's not how I want to parent. And then that's why it goes back to calming down the nervous system and calming our reactivity and understanding how that works, because then I got myself in parenting of this adorable 2-year-old with the cheeks and just so cute, like it's amazing, and my temper came out like crazy, and it was so frustrating because it wasn't something I chose. Nobody is consciously choosing to lose it at their kids. No one wakes up in the morning and says, oh, I think I'm going to scream at, Skylar at 3:00 today. No, like it's not a conscious choice that we're making. It's our nervous system reactivity. It's our fight, flight, or freeze stress response, feeling under threat, that leads us to get escalated and yell. And we're not even using our whole brain, right? So that's what's beautiful about a mindfulness practice, as well as getting enough sleep, is that a mindfulness practice, they've actually shown in MRI scans that it actually, there's the amygdala, which are kind of the oh crap centers of the brain, the seat of the fight, flight, or freeze stress response. It actually shrinks those and makes those less dense. It actually shrinks the connectivity between the amygdala and the rest of the brain. And an 8-week practice of mindfulness actually makes more dense the prefrontal cortex, which is the seat of our verbal ability, problem-solving ability, creativity, but impulse control. Impulse control, right? It actually increases that in the brain. So this thing that can feel like I'm just sitting here and I'm not doing anything except I'm thinking the whole time and, oh, I can't do this and whatever, all this stuff. But this awareness that we build, it actually literally changes the brain so that we can be ultimately over time calmer, less reactive, and use our whole brain to make choices more often.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously I'm not the professional in this field, but I think when parents are calm, it makes the children more calm and secure. There's a secure element. Like I've seen people, and of course I'm just the theorist here, but I've seen people that you go in the store and they are completely ignoring their kids, and their kids are just they're climbing the shelves, they're throwing things all over, they're complete out of control, and the parents seem oblivious sometimes in these cases, and it's almost like the kids are just demanding attention and they're not getting it. And so I don't know, it seems like maybe being calm and being secure can mirror that. The children will mirror that, I guess is what I'm trying to say, maybe.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, that's the thing about us. Like, it's very, especially true with kids and especially true with young kids, but it's true with all of us that we feel each other's emotions. We are with each other. You know, like if I'm in a room with you, even like over the Zoom in some cases, right? Like if I was feeling really anxious and you could probably see that in me, you might start to feel some of those feelings. We have all those mirror neurons. If we're in a room with each other, we start to feel each other's emotions. It's not our pores are, we are porous, right? Especially emotionally, we tend to feel each other's emotions. That's really a great gift of human beings, and it's a great challenge of us. But with kids, they don't have the ability to, they don't know how to regulate their nervous system. Telling them to stop crying doesn't work. Telling them you're okay when they're not okay doesn't work. Telling them to go to their room and do it by themselves, that doesn't work. It actually makes them more, dysregulated. So how do they get regulated? It's through the process of, when they're infants, soothing them again and again and again and again and again. And then later, as they're, toddlers and smaller kids, that's why us taking care of our needs, taking care of our own stress response, that whole foundation is so important, because that's what little kids need from us. They need to borrow our calm. We need to practice to become steady and to practice some ease and to slow down a little as best we can, and under the circumstances that aren't easy for parents, because parents don't have, especially in the United States, have zero support, systems, and we're all separated from our tribes, right? So it's very hard. But as best we can, we have to, our job is to, if we want our kids to calm down, we have to calm ourselves down. We have to use the breath, because it's cliche. We have to remind our nervous system that this isn't an emergency, right? That I'm helping my child and all of these things. And that takes some practice. It takes some work. It's not like you're going to remember it in the tough moment, right? You have to kind of be intentional and practice it in the calm moments. And then that's when it's accessible to you when you really need it.
Definitely. Should mothers be taking time out once a day to do yoga, meditate, do some of these things, and kind of maybe step away and separate themselves?
Absolutely, sure. I mean, I think mothers and fathers, like anyone in a caregiving role, because caregiving kids is so hard. It's so demanding. But yeah, you should be taking a break and taking the time, for what works for you, to regulate your nervous system and to practice that calm. It may be yoga, it may be meditation, it may be something else, maybe just walking slowly through like that wooded path near your house if you have that, right? There are a lot of different, in Raising Good Humans Every Day, I offer a lot of different tools for that. But parents, we have these expectations, and especially moms have this expectation, especially if maybe we've left the workforce or something, that, now I have to be mom 24 hours a day, all the time. And that's what my child needs from me best but that's a misguided thinking, because it's great. It's wonderful to be with your child. But if you're with your child so often that you're being driven bonkers by the experience of being with a 3-year-old for 24 hours a day, multiple days a week, like who wouldn't be driven bonkers by that? Then how can you get breaks? How can you just be you outside of the role of mom, right? Like all of that ultimately makes you a better parent, but you should do it just for you anyway. Like you don't have to, back to that thing, you don't have to be a martyr. It's not good for you. It's not good for your kids. It leads to burnout and resentment and bad parenting.
There you go. And I think mothers feel guilty sometimes about taking care of themselves over their kids. I mean, is that a challenge that they have?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, there's so much, we live in a culture that's been patriarchal for a long time, right? Where women were not valued except in their caregiving roles. So in that mindset kind of lives on, right? We know that lives on, and that if, mothers who are assertive, are not valued, and mothers who are nurturing are, right? Like, so we know that exists. And so that mom guilt comes up, and I think it's important that's why I think it's important for moms, especially, to sort of, surround themselves with some media and things like, I do the Mindful Mama podcast, this idea of like surround yourself with voices who are saying, no, that's BS. This is not good for you. It's not good for your kids. Like, because otherwise it's kind of like the water we're swimming in otherwise, and we need to remind ourselves that no, our needs are very important. Our needs matter. And it's not helpful ultimately for our kids to always be putting ourselves last. Like that's not going to do the trick.
And I imagine going to the gym is good too, doing the self work. And of course, there's a lot of elements of the gym. I know a lot of mothers go to the gym too as well. And that can be, for me, the gym is almost a place of meditation. And I kind of find myself being present. And even though my dog kids don't like it when I leave the house or go to the gym, they're kind of upset sometimes. But, it helps reset me too.
You're a better dog parent when you get back.
You are. There's less yelling and screaming.
No, I mean, that was one of the first things I did when my daughter was little, was that I took her to the YMCA childcare, and she didn't like the YMCA childcare. Like, my second daughter did like it, but my first daughter did not like it. And so they would come get me after 10 minutes and say, she's crying, you have to come get her. And I'd be like, oh God. And so I'd go back. And so we did that for like 2 weeks, where it had to go incrementally longer amounts of time. And a lot of moms would give up at that point and say, oh my goodness, my child is unhappy, doesn't love this place. I will sacrifice my gym time for my child. And I say, ultimately this hour where your child is maybe not in their happiest spot, but that gives you time to, to burn off your anxieties, to feel good in your body, to get energy, to relax, to shower by yourself. This is, it's worth your child having 1 hour where they're in a non-optimal hour for them, right? And then my second child loved childcare, so she was fine. But like, it's, we have to consider, we have to be weighting parents' needs and values a little higher in the scale, and that is ultimately better for kids.
There you go. I think you alluded to too. Were you a first child?
Me? No, I was a baby of the family.
Okay, you were talking about your first child and the paradigm between the first and second, so I took a guess there. But I was a first child. Is there any stuff that you talk about? And I imagine you've covered a lot in 10 years on the podcast about how maybe we should be a little easier on the first child.
It's hard though, because we're so anxious, right? We're worried about doing it right. I know. Work can be so, like, the first child ends up birth order. We did have a podcast on birth order. We talked about how the first child is often more responsible.
Well, they're the best. But
they're the responsible one. But yeah, it's hard because, like, I feel a little, my oldest child, my second child, by the time she came around, I was like so much more relaxed. I wasn't afraid I was going to kill her all the time. I was like, okay, I can just chill. I had started all of these practices more, so I wasn't so anxious and on edge. And it's hard because parents have so much pressure on them. And we know, like, that attachment style and styles of relating, they're really honed in this first 3 years of life, and that's when you don't know at all what you're doing. So it's like, it's incredibly hard for parents. But yeah, we should definitely be easier on first children, and then give them a little more. One of the things that we could do to be easier on them is give them more space and time to just play and be kids, to not have so many, when they're little kids, so many adult directed activities, to have time for free play. This is so important. And it's something kids are like losing nowadays, that they don't have time to go outside. They don't have time to do risky play like climbing trees. There are no merry-go-rounds left in the world. I was like amazed. I found one once in Pennsylvania. I was like, oh my God, look, my children, this is this thing. And all of these things it's hurting kids. Like, do you know that there are occupational therapists, right, who I've talked to on the podcast, who told me how kids are falling out of their seats in schools.
Really?
Because they don't have time to develop their vestibular system through swinging swinging around
Really?
and jumping up and down, like those things, right? Like that's what maybe a merry-go-round does, is like it swings you around, and the kids need that
Yeah.
to develop their vestibular system, their sense of balance.
Yeah.
So these things that, we know there's all these other reasons, right? But like, this is something that we could give to oldest children and second children and third children, is a little more time to slow down, have some down days, and just be kids. Just play outside. Like, it doesn't have to be elaborate. It can be super simple, and you don't have to be their entertainer either. Just let them be in your environment.
There you go. Unless you don't hear anything, and then that's a problem, right?
Then check it out.
That's secret stepdad. I as a first child, I do think we need to have laws on first children that they get away with as much murder as the baby people do. 'Cause I've seen it so many times. Like the first child sitting there going, I can't do anything right, and this kid's over here committing murder and robbing banks, and the mother's just like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. We love that one. And you're just like, I'm going to murder that one. But no, I'm kidding around.
Nothing we need to talk to the therapist about.
Yeah, there might be some issues there. He's seen me and I've seen him. But no, it's something parents need to think about. And you mentioned a good thing about letting children explore and play. Us Gen Xers, we I don't know if it's the same merry-go-round you're referring to. You might be referring to the one with the rope, right? In the bar.
I had ours had like metal bars.
I was going to say
ours on to for dear life.
Exactly. That's the ones I was referring to or leading up to with the Gen X thing. That thing was a death trap, a wheel of death was what that was.
Especially if like some 17-year-olds got there and started to spin it so fast.
Yeah. And I sadly knew people who didn't make it off that thing, or who they made it off and didn't land well. But it was a death trap of broken bones. But you learn survival. It was a form of Darwinism, I think.
I guess so.
You learn balance, like you mentioned earlier. So.
It develops your vestibular system.
it definitely did, which is probably why I have good fight or flight mechanisms to this day. A few more plugs I'd like to get in here for some of the stuff you have on your website. I think it's really cool. You have the Ultimate Mindful Parenting Conference that you do. Do you want to get a plug in about that?
Sure, yeah. So I've done interviews with incredible experts over the years, and this is a collection of some of my favorite interviews, like a virtual conference of sorts that can be accessed by anyone, and some of my favorite teachers, and you can learn a lot.
There you go. And then you even have a course on teacher training. My mom was a teacher for 25 years, and so was my sister. So I know how challenging that is, too, on top of being a parent.
Yeah, well, it's the mindful parenting teacher training. So it's to teach people to teach the mindful parenting course that I developed in their communities or wherever they want to teach it, in like schools, institutions for parents. And it teaches the method of calming reactivity and then how to communicate. And it could be just for parents who are passionate and want to have extra income or work to do, or maybe sometimes like there have been therapists who take it to add on to their offerings as a therapist, etc.
Definitely helpful notes. So anything more you want to tease out or tell us before we go out?
Sure. I mean, I guess the only thing I want to mention here is that if you're a parent and listening to this, it's so hard. It's not easy. And one of the big things that I talk about in Raising Good Humans every day is the real practicality and importance of self-compassion, that when we want to do right for our kids and we're going to mess up. We're human. We are going to be human and mess up. It's inevitable. And when we're harsh to ourselves, when we mess up, when we berate ourselves, that just kind of leaves us incapacitated. It's harder to start again. And what we really need to do is to be able to begin anew again and again every day. And so when we start to, even if it feels uncomfortable for us, it isn't our native language, when we start to practice self-compassion, using kind words to ourselves when we make mistakes, etc., it's actually a very practical thing to do, because you can get up. You give yourself a soft landing, you can get up and begin anew again. And it's okay. I give you permission. You have permission to be human. Just give yourself some compassion and keep beginning anew. Try again.
There you go. We're human. We're going to make mistakes, and it's okay. I don't think anyone has a perfect run through life. I think a lot of people think about perfection. I'm going to be the perfect parent. Maybe people think about, I don't know. I thought I'd be the perfect dog parent. Boy, was I wrong. And I'm still working on it. But, some of the stuff you talked about, being present and stuff, is so important. And, this life goes by so fast. If you don't stop to stop to take a look around every now and then, I think someone said, you're going to miss it. Thank you very much for coming on the show with us, Hunter. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Chris. I really, really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you. And thanks so much for tuning in. Let's get a .com, actually, Hunter, for you as people go out so they can check you out in the podcast.
Sure. Everything is at mindfulmamamentor.com.
There you go. Order up the book, folks. Wherever fine books are sold, only go to those fine bookstores, because the alleyway bookstores, you might get mugged. Check it out. Raising Good Humans Every Day. 50 Simple Ways to Press Pause, Stay Present, and Connect with Your Kids. Always important. Better parenting can just make a better world, in my mind. I'll endorse that any day of the week. August 1st, 2023. You can order wherever fine books are sold. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time.